This is Dr. Janet Branchaw. She's with the Center for Biology Education, and I wanted to thank her for agreeing to talk with us about developing an effective mentor-mentee relationship. So Janet, why is the mentor-mentee relationship so important?
Well, in a research experience, it's critically important. The research experience is a new kind of learning experience for most students, and it's a one-on-one learning experience between the teacher and the student. And if you're going to be successful with your research project, this person, this mentor, is going to play a huge role in that success. So you need to make sure that you have an open relationship, open communication with that person, so that as you move through the research experience, which is usually a new thing for students, and so they need to get feedback a lot along the way. And so you want to have an open relationship with that person so that you can feel comfortable going to them and that they feel comfortable and up to date on what you're doing in the project.
Well, you've addressed this a little bit, but how do you classify this mentor relationship different from other relationships? The person isn't your boss or your friend, so what is it?
I think at the core of it is that this research project that you're working on together, that you have in common, is important both for your development as a scientist and for your mentor's research group. And so you have this common you have a common goal here. And oftentimes if you're working for somebody and you're just your boss, they're not really necessarily invested in your development as an individual or as a scientist. They're interested in the results that you're getting. In a mentor-mentee relationship, the development of you as a scientist, as a young student, is as important as the research project. So it's a special kind of relationship. It's unique in that your development as a researcher is as important as the development of the research project. And so taking advantage of having a senior person who's experienced in the field and learning from their experience along the way in terms of both research and how to be a professional in that field is critical. And so this is different than the kind of relationship that you would have with the boss at just a regular job or that you have with friends.
Great. Well, what kinds of things do you suggest that a student tell their mentor about themselves as their relationship is developing?
Well, there are a couple things that I would recommend. The first is that you tell your mentor what your goals are for your research project, and also tell them what your goals are for your own personal, professional development and your career development, so that they understand what you hope to get out of the relationship. The other thing that I would recommend is that you outline what your expectations are for the research project itself. So it could be that at the end, really what you want out of the experience is just to see what it's like to do research, learn techniques, make a contribution to the research group, but you're there more to kind of get a feel for what research is like. At the other end of that spectrum, you may decide that you want to have a publication by the end of this, and so you really want to have a project and you want to make significant progress. So when you first start to talk with your mentor about the research you're going to do together and this particular project that you're going to work on, I think it's important that you come to an agreement about the expectations you have for yourself and that you have for the project, so that you can establish a reasonable plan and a timeline in which you can achieve those goals.
That's great. So as this relationship is progressing, what kinds of questions should the student be asking of their mentor?
Well, to mirror the last answer, I think the same kinds of questions or things that you tell your mentor about yourself, you should also ask them what are their goals and expectations for the project, and then also for you as a professional. So this is really an opportunity for you to have someone who's experienced in the field, someone who kind of knows the path to becoming a researcher, him or herself, and they may have some expectations or some goals for you as a developing scientist that you hadn't really thought about. So asking them about that. The other thing is, because they've been down this path, you should take the opportunity to learn about their background and where they're from and how they chose their career, this field, this discipline, and how they overcame challenges along the way. And you can have a back and forth conversation about that. I mean, where do you come from, and what challenges have you overcome thus far in your career, and where do you hope to get, and why is being a researcher part of what you're considering?
Well, a lot of what we've talked about so far involves these interactions. What would you suggest for a student for how often they should plan to meet with their mentor?
Well, I guess the simplest answer here is on a regular basis. But as far as time goes, how often that happens really depends on your and your mentor's schedules. And some mentors are going to be very busy. They might be out of town a lot. And in that case, I would recommend that you make sure that you have another person in the research group with whom you can meet regularly. I found that students who meet with their mentors or some co-mentor who's in the research group at least once a week tend to make reasonable progress. If they start having problems with some of their experiments or some of the work that they're doing, no more than a week will go by before they know that they're going to have a chance to check in with somebody to get feedback and help on their project. So weekly meetings are great. If the professor you're working with is not available every week, at least try for every other week or maybe even every month. But then if you have another person in the research group, a postdoctoral fellow or a graduate student or somebody who's familiar with your project and knows your project, you can meet with them more often. They're usually more available. But a regular meeting time with somebody is a very good idea.
Well, you've alluded to this a little bit already, that each mentor-mentee relationship is a bit different. Can you talk about the spectrum of these relationships?
Because it's such a personal relationship between two individuals, it's personal yet professional. And oftentimes it depends on the personalities of those two people. So if the two folks have personalities that really mesh, they can become friends as well as mentor and mentee. If it leans toward the professional side, they might be more in a boss or a supervisor, a worker kind of relationship. So it can really vary. And I think that having that discussion at the very beginning about what kind of a relationship you want to have, and paying attention to how much time and energy that your mentor has for you at the very beginning of the relationship is key. So I don't think there is no one right way to mentor a student, and it's really going to depend a lot on who the mentor is and what their style is. One of the questions you could ask when you very first meet with your mentor is, what is your mentoring style, or do you have a mentoring philosophy? And then you might also share with that person what your learning style is. So when you're talking about what your goals are and stuff, when you have the conversation about how are you going to work together, you can talk about, I'm a very good visual learner, or I really need to see things written down, or I like to talk about things and that's how I understand them better. So as you get to know that person, you'll get to know them more as a person and not just as a mentor to you or a supervisor to you. And so I think that the spectrum of those relationships is wide and it's ever evolving, so it becomes more and more intense as time goes on.
Well, these are really wonderful pieces of advice. Thank you so much for talking with us about developing an effective mentoring relationship.
Very welcome. Thanks for asking me.